Welcome and thank you for joining us today. I'm going to be presenting an argument that justifies deist theology. It's going to be regarding miracles and divine activity. I myself am not a deist, but I used to be. I'm now a panentheist. However, I do like deism, so it is the purposes for me presenting this argument are to help the deists justify their beliefs, because I do think there's certainly validity there. So I hope that what I'm going to present today will enrich those experiences. So let me first by talking about a classical argument against miracles that was first proposed by David Hume. I'll read an excerpt. He says, "When anyone tells me that he saw a dead man restored to life, I immediately consider myself whether it may be more probable that this person should either be deceived or that the fact which he relates should really have happened. I weigh the one miracle against the other, and according to the superiority which I discover, I pronounce my decision and always reject the greater miracle. If the falsity of his testimony would be more miraculous than the event he relates, and not till then can he pretend to command my belief or opinion." So David Hume here is saying that he's weighing the two options of the testimony and the miracle, and the probability that the testimony is flawed, mistaken, or the person's lying is always going to be greater than the actual miracle at hand. That is a suspension of the laws of nature. So this is the classical argument. There has been some arguments that I guess reduce the blow of this type of reasoning. So I'm not going to go into that, but what I did want to discuss was an argument put forth actually by an Anglican priest and theologian. His name is Professor Maurice Wiles, and he puts forward, I think, one of the most convincing modern arguments as to why God never acts in the universe. And I think people intuitively touch on this argument, although it's probably not elaborately formulated or laid out. However, Wiles, I did say he's an Anglican priest. He maintains 2 points. One is that God creates and sustains the universe in existence, and I think this is something that most deists would concede. The second point is that God never ever acts in the universe, and this is something that most deists, again, would probably concede and agree with. So Wiles claims that if God could act in the world, then God would not be worthy of worship. If God acted to cure a person of cancer or to help a believer in his or her life, then God would have to be condemned. As if God is able to act, then God's failure to act in so many cases of extreme evil and suffering around the world means that God deserves condemnation and not praise. Wiles claims that someone who can act to help those in need and who fails to do so deserves to be condemned. And if God was able to help those children and adults suffering from cancer, those in dangers on the seas, or those in war, or those being tortured, then God deserves condemnation. A God who could act and fails to do so, therefore, is to be rejected. This, of course, has major consequences for any idea of God. Acting by way of miracles and answering prayer. Both of these are rejected by Wiles for the reasons given. Even the incarnation and resurrection of Jesus, as traditionally understood as God acting to become a human being, and of Jesus raising from the dead, are rejected by Wiles. What makes this argument so deistic is that God's hands seem to be tied in a sense, because if he were to act in the universe, he would not only be suspending the laws of nature and the generalizations that have been put in place by him, but he would be worthy of condemnation simply because of the selective nature of him helping one, not the other. So it seems to be an all or nothing sort of mentality behind Wiles' argument. So this argument seems to be a combination between an argument against miracles, but also an argument from evil. So this is something new that I at least didn't come across until I was exposed to Wiles' argument. I find it fairly convincing, and I would say that for a deist would be able to use this to justify that belief that God does not act in the universe. So I present this here for you to some food for thought, and if you would like to respond to this, add any comments, or if you have any objections, I'd love to hear it. So I look forward to it. Thanks again, and we'll see you later.